Good evening. Oh my goodness, I did it again. So good evening everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where on the globe you are. I see we have somebody from upstate New York. That's great to have you on the stream tonight, or this afternoon as it is where you are. So I hope you're all very well. Hope you had a wonderful weekend and you're ready for some more crazy stuff this week. So with a few stories to cover tonight, your party had their conference. I'm going to cover a bit on that, where Zara Sultana was talking about nationalising the economy. So that's an interesting take, to put it one way. A little bit on the budget, jury trials, which are being suspended in some cases. Was Keir Starmer lying? And a few other stories, including Nigel Farage racism allegations. So we'll get to that a little bit later. So there's a story that just dropped as I was coming on the live stream. It was about 20 minutes ago. It says MPs approve changes to inheritance tax for farmers. So this is going to be an interesting story and development, because as we know, the farmers have been protesting over the last number of months, really since Labour took power, and they've been demanding changes to inheritance tax. Now, I get where they're coming from, because this is actually going to affect big farmers more than small farmers, but smaller farmers have been brought along as well to this. And I think it was Phil from A Different Bias was also mentioning how it would make more sense for a land tax as opposed to this inheritance tax, which is harming small farmers as well. But it covered, I think it's about farmers who are passing on property over the value of, I think it was a 2.5 million or £3 million. So we're not talking about very small farmers, but if you account for everything on the farm, maybe you get up to something like that. It'd have to be a pretty big farm, though. But it was, of course, weaponized by the likes of Reform UK, which was quite ironic, considering what they did to farmers with Brexit. Anyway, it says here, so MPs approved changes to inheritance tax. The result was ayes 327, noes 182. It was a smaller majority than previous votes this evening, suggesting that some Labour MPs have abstained to avoid upsetting their constituents. And once again, this was an issue that was pretty much weaponized by the right and the Conservatives in particular. And now they're going to go to the constituencies and say, look, we voted against this. You're a farmer. We voted in favour of getting rid of this inheritance tax change. Once again, it's not about inheritance tax, it's about a change to inheritance tax. Don't step on my land, Clarkson. Yes. So Jeremy Clarkson, for people who don't know, Jeremy Clarkson, the former host of Top Gear, the motoring show, he allegedly bought land, turned it into a farm in order to avoid inheritance tax. So now his land there will be inheritance tax on it when he passes it on to his kids. But I think a better approach would have been a land tax, because then it would have impacted small farmers less, and then the big farmers, the big landowners, even people who don't actually produce anything, they would be hit by this. And of course, we're talking about some people who own half of Dorset. What's his name? An MP in the House of Commons. His name is Drax. Sounds like an evil villain from James Bond or something. He has a huge amount of land, and of course, if he was against this, even though he isn't a farmer himself. Hi Max, Graham sent me. I was going to have you on, Sarah. Hope you're well, Sarah in Wales. And thanks to Graham and Politics Social for sending people over here. I have to return the favor at the next live stream. Come on, Mr. Bond. Come in, Mr. Bond. Yes. So I think there will be a bit of a hullabaloo about this over the next number of days, but like most of these things, it will die down eventually. Also from Sky News, there's another story here I wanted to cover quickly. MPs approve the freezing of income tax thresholds. So this is going to be something that's going to be, I think it's going to create a lot of problems for Labour going forward. So what are these income tax thresholds? So it's the threshold in which you pay tax. So if the government hadn't frozen them, it meant that as people's incomes increase as a result of wage inflation, they would remain within their existing tax bracket. But because the tax thresholds have been frozen, it means that a lot of people have fallen into a higher tax bracket, not by anything they have done, but because of the freezing of the threshold. So this means a lot more people are going to end up paying tax. Now, some people have responded by saying, well, this is the Labour Party breaching their manifesto, because they said they would not increase taxes on working people, which is a little bit dishonest. Could we say dishonest? Because this technically they're not increasing the taxes, but they are freezing the tax threshold, which means that more and more people who, as their wages increase a little bit as a result of inflation or general increases, they're ending up paying a lot more in tax. So technically Labour did not lie, but I think the problem here is the spirit of the idea that the threshold being frozen results in more and more people paying more and more tax, and this has upset a lot of people. But was there another way around this? The alternative was borrowing more, but that wouldn't have been something that the Chancellor could do with her fiscal rules, and of course cutting public services, and that was not what Labour should not be engaging in, as in more and more austerity. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. So this is this is from your party. So it's officially called Your Party now. So Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's party is officially called Your Party because they voted on the name. And well, Zara Sultana was interviewed by Owen Jones about some of the policies that they may push.
You asked yesterday about kind of policies for the country, and you said nationalise the entire economy. So just wondering, what does that look like?
That looks like a socialist transformation of the country where we nationalise utilities, we nationalise energy, we nationalise transport, we nationalise communications, including the internet, but we also have to broaden our horizons.
But not the entire economy, though.
So we have to have a socialist economy that includes workers running their workplaces through cooperatives. It means public services run for profit, not need, with, workers and users on the boards of those organisations.
Democratic ownership.
And it means the entire economy run by workers, not the billionaires and the corporations that run it today.
So that mean I'm just interested because I mean like kiosks, like small little cafe kiosks, that kind of.
Workers' cooperatives.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just interested because it's.
Okay, but that's something different.
I'm just trying to. I think it's fascinating.
The entire economy under the control of workers.
Okay.
Whether that is nationalisation, workers' cooperatives.
Socialisation.
And when we look at especially things like food, that means looking at the entire food production system and that being under the control of workers.
Okay, I don't know how well that's going to go down with a lot of people. I have a few questions or a few issues with it. So first of all, if you're going to nationalise everything, does she mean everything? Like, she's talking about infrastructure. She mentioned infrastructure. She mentioned, and I actually agree with a lot of these things. Public transport, okay. But should private transport also be nationalised? Like taxi services, should they be provided by the state? I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Would you get rid of Uber and replace it with would you replace a private company with a state organisation? So, for example, Uber, would it be instead you'd have taxi drivers, but they would be state operated? I think this would create a massive bureaucracy that could be difficult to manage. Now, there is another alternative here, that the idea that what we're going to see in the future is we're going to see AI do a lot of work. So she's focusing on workers doing the work and workers contributing to society through cooperatives. So they run the businesses themselves. But I think we're going to start to see more and more AI take over a lot of people's jobs. And in that case, it would make sense for the state to be monitoring at least, and at best maybe in control of some of that AI, so that it's producing prosperity for everyone and not just a small group of people. Because at the moment what we have is we have big corporations who are hoarding a lot of the wealth because ordinary people are working and they're delivering this prosperity upwards to the richest people in society, and they're hoarding all of this. Under AI, would there be no workers? So people would have no real value in society and no monetary value in society, because your value is based on what you can produce generally. Okay, I'm just generalization here. So the more you can produce, the more valuable you are to a business. But if AI is doing the work, then the people have no value whatsoever. So we need to completely change. Look behind me. We need to change our society where we move away from the idea that you have to work in order to receive money to produce something, or to consume something, that things are provided for the public. You know, once again, automation and AI is going to take away a lot of our buying power, a lot of our bargaining power. Brian, thank you so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream tonight. Hope you're well. Gullis wasn't good enough for the zoo. So he joined Reform UK instead. I don't know, Brad, if you saw the video today with Jonathan Gullis defecting. So there was an interesting clip from a few years ago. It was not even a few years ago. It was last March, when Lee Anderson, Neanderthal, defected from. Well, he didn't really defect because he became an independent and then he switched to Reform. Jonathan Gullis was saying, no, that never happened to me, because I believe you need to stay in the party and reform it from within. And if you have problems, we speak about them and we try and resolve these problems. We don't jump ship. We don't abandon the captain. And what is he doing now? He's abandoning his captaining and jumping ship. And he's not even going the independent route. He's jumping directly from the Conservatives, although he did lose his seat at the last election. And he did try and get back into teaching, which was interesting because he had insulted teachers and trade unions when he was an MP with the Conservatives. That didn't go down. Can you imagine? Jonathan Gullis turns up at an interview for a school or whatever, and they're like, you're here. Well, let's play a clip of you in the House of Commons a couple of months back when you're talking about trade unions and talking about teachers and talking about wokeness and how we're all woke and we're all brainwashing children against the Conservatives or whatever. Yeah, so he also tried a bit on Talk TV, I think, for a while. Maybe I should have invited him on this. We should have done a live stream together. I could ask him some interesting questions. Like, is he the missing link or something like that? Students, get me out of here. Bet he was a good teacher. Yes, I can imagine. He'd be the type of teacher who'd bring his politics to class. I'm guaranteeing it. Bitter and twisted. But anyway, back to your party. So the idea that you could nationalize everything, I don't know. It's a nice idea. Dylan wants to talk, Max. Yes, Dylan is. I was hoping you couldn't hear him because he's downstairs, but it's the filter isn't strong enough. But it's an interesting, like, worker cooperatives is a good idea, but once again we're moving away from working. This is a massive elephant that people are ignoring in the room. AI, robotics, automation. This is going to take away a lot of jobs. We're already seeing a number of companies freeze hiring. At the moment, they're not sacking people, but they're freezing new hiring. And this means that a lot of young people are not getting on the career ladder when it's really important at the very beginning. So they're not gaining the experience needed to progress. And we're seeing a lot of companies deciding to freeze or offload a lot of responsibility onto existing staff and encourage them to use AI. Max, your party is a mess. This is coming from somebody who is center-left. So when you said your party, like my party, I don't have a party. Oh, yes, okay. Yes, your party is a mess. Or I wish they had changed the name to something a bit more user-friendly because every time somebody says, hey, your party, I'm like, what? I don't have a... Oh, yes. Or if I refer to your party. So I would prefer to call it, the Corbyn Sultana party or something like that. Anyway, once again, I like the idea of a cooperative, but we're moving away from businesses employing people and the idea that the state... like, would you like the state to provide you with a smartphone? Would you like them to run a business where they produce smartphones, for example, or technology? I think it makes more sense for that to be in the private sector. Look at for example TVs, smart TVs. The price of them have come down dramatically over the last 10-15 years. So I don't know. I'm not fully on board with the idea of nationalizing everything. I think utilities certainly, infrastructure certainly, and then is she talking about full nationalization, or is she talking about partial, in the sense that the state get involved, the state have a majority share in these companies? So you still have private shareholders, but the state have the biggest percentage, or they have a commanding share in the company, commanding ownership of the company. I'm not sure what she means. Or is it just complete and utter nationalization, so there's no private money involved whatsoever? I think we need a bit more details on this. That's a pretty shitty part with two people in it. Party. Well, I think they have more than two people in the party. It's like a few thousand, actually. Well, a few thousand have signed, like 100,000, or was it 800,000 people have signed up out of interest. I'm not sure how many people are contributing. And then there is, of course, money issues as well. Some of the money has disappeared, it seems. Or it was not very clear where the money was going. Why is socialism portrayed as antisocial? I think it's a big problem with words like social, labels like socialist or Marxist or communist. They're all used interchangeably, and whenever you hear the word socialist brought up, it's always associated with Soviet Russia or communist China. It's never associated with, for example, the Scandinavian countries. Bernie Sanders in the US has been trying to convince people. Look at Denmark, look at Sweden, look at Finland, look at those societies as opposed to the Soviet Union. Those countries are democratic socialists or social democrats that are in charge there. Your party should have been called the Islington Popular Front. Or the People's Front of Judea. The People's Front of Islington, yes. Oh my goodness. It's I said, look, I don't see it lasting very long. Will it last until Christmas? Well, Christmas is only a few weeks away. I think they really need to get their skates on. They need to start publishing a manifesto if they want to win some seats at the local elections coming up next May. And they have to start campaigning. They have to make sure they have an infrastructure in place. And they're still messing about, and I'm not sure how well they're going to do. I remember that show. Anyway, let's move on. Talking about one party on the left, let's jump to the other side of the political spectrum, and we have ex-Reform UK MP Rupert Lowe sets up party. So Rupert Lowe has his own party as well. So former Reform UK MP, who is now serving as an independent, has set up a new political party, because that's what we need, more political parties under a first-past-the-post system. Rupert Lowe, who represents Great Yarmouth, has launched the Great Yarmouth First, which he says is will solely promote the interests of his constituents, or his constituency. Okay, well, this is a bit of a letdown, because when he's in Parliament, he hardly ever talks about his constituents. He's always talking about immigration. Once again, you have to remember that his constituency is about 200 miles away from Dover. I think it's about 200 miles away. So remember recently he got a bit, he ended up with some egg on his face when he was taking pictures or encouraging people to shout and scream. Maybe he didn't encourage them, but he was taking pictures of people who were in a rowing competition and he posted on social media thinking that it was asylum seekers crossing the channel in Yarmouth, which is once again 200 miles away from Dover. Oh my goodness. So this guy, he's not a serious individual, and he doesn't spend much of his time actually representing his constituents. He spends more of his time complaining about asylum seekers, or illegal migrants as he likes to call them. David McGuinness, great to see you on the stream tonight. I want to meet up with David, maybe do a stream with him at some stage, talk about what happened. It'd be great to hear what happened in detail and what the future holds for you, David. So it'd be great to speak with you. Either I could jump on your stream or you can jump on one of mine some of the next days, maybe this week or next week. It'd be great to chat with you about that, David. And if you don't know David, do check out the Two Davies YouTube channel. And they had a recent incident which is interesting, to put it mildly. Thanks, David. The Soviet Union. You're getting old, Max. The young whippersnappers don't know anything about the Soviet Union on this stream. Comedian Michael McIntyre said anyone wearing glasses with a string around their neck are no longer sexually active. Lois doing this. Thanks, Brad. It's true. Anyway, what else does it say here? According to Lowe, 500 residents have already joined, and he has funded a year's membership fees for those first 500 people. So he's basically funding the party. He's a multimillionaire as far as I can remember. Lowe said that his party would be completely focused on doing what is right for Great Yarmouth, not what is right for Norwich or London. Yes, but you're the MP for Great Yarmouth. So, why would you set up a party? You're already elected as an independent to represent the people of that constituency. So why aren't you doing... Actually, he wasn't elected as an independent. He was elected for Reform UK, and then he became an independent. He wasn't elected to represent himself as an independent. He was elected to represent Reform. Lowe, who will continue to serve as an independent in Parliament, said he had hoped the area-specific local party could be adopted elsewhere in the country. This is grassroots Britain taking back control of its destiny. One guy is going to take back control of destiny, Britain's destiny. Look, outside social media, nobody really knows who Rupert Lowe is. I've covered him a number of times, but he had a big following during the riots, of course, and he had a big following when Elon Musk gave him a boost, but that's sort of disappeared now. So I think he's desperate to get some attention once again, and probably he's hoping that Elon Musk will reach out to him again and say, hey, here, I'm going to give you some free publicity, because that's what he's hoping for. But I think starting a party at this time is, you'd need to do it right before the general election, at least a year before the general election. Doing it now, what sort of momentum can he get? Rupert who? Exactly. Lowe is so posh, he makes Jacob Rees-Mogg look like a chav. That's true. And he has the glasses with the string on them. Rupert Lowe was a former chairman of Southampton Football Club, and didn't do well. No, that's as far as I know, it wasn't a roaring success. Anyway, guys, let's move on to our next story. So the budget. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, I promise, but it says here, budget 2025, over a third of Britons think Rachel Reeves exaggerated bad news. So what's the problem here with the budget, and what's the problem with Rachel Reeves? So it seems since all of this, I would like to call it a storm in a teacup, it sort of died down because the OBR have come out since this storm began brewing and said that, look, it was Rachel Reeves did not lie. It wasn't all that rosy. So, see, the problem here is that, and I keep coming back to this point, what the government need to do is like your party, they need to shut the F up. So what Rachel Reeves should have done when it came to the budget is not said anything. She should have instructed the party, we're not going to comment on the budget. Look, it wouldn't be right. we'll have to wait for the budget to be released and then you can comment on the budget. But what happened was people were briefing out aspects of the budget, saying the taxes were going to rise and then they were not going to rise, and then there was going to be an austerity budget, then not an austerity budget, and all this crap kept coming out. Instead, and Rachel Reeves didn't help her situation because she was also doing interviews talking about, well, we're not going to increase taxes or whatever. We're not going to increase taxes on working people and all of this sort of crap. And then what happened was she had to go back on it. So it seems that not the black hole, the headroom. The headroom was completely off, but not to a stage where it would create problems. So it seems that the OBR were right to say, look, the situation isn't so bad. But Rachel Reeves couldn't come out and say the situation isn't so bad. It's not great, but it's not so bad. Because if she said it's not so bad, then she wouldn't be able to tell people that, well, there are tough decisions going to be made. We're not, we're going to have to increase taxes. Because if she said the situation isn't bad, then she couldn't increase taxes. But then she couldn't say the situation is an absolute disaster, because then people would say, well, you've been in power for over a year, then why haven't you improved the situation? And last budget, you said that, well, we're not going to increase taxes again, even though you did. So I think the communications department, or whoever runs communications in the Labour Party, needs to be sacked. And they need to get on board with the idea that, at least when it comes to a budget, you keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about the budget until budget day. You can dismiss briefings, just say, look, I'm not going to comment on briefings. I'm not going to talk about these briefings. So these briefings, I cannot even just come out and say, look, I'm not allowed to talk about the budget because it's against the rules. Why doesn't she do that? Why didn't she do that? But instead you had this disaster. So in a big blow for Keir Starmer, once again, this is some of this has changed, but this is the main story. In a huge blow for Sir Keir Starmer, Labour have now less trust than Liz Truss. Are now less trusted than Liz Truss, who oversee the mini-budget on the economy. Latest polling has revealed some 52% think that the country will be worse off because of the budget. This is a real problem because, as I keep saying, the only way to hold on to power is to convince ordinary people that their situation has improved and that you're responsible for it. Was Rees truthful on the economy? So it says here, she made out that things were worse than they really are, 37%. She was broadly honest about how bad the economy was, 18%. She made out things that are better than they really are. No, she didn't. 13% and 32% don't know. Look, I don't think this specific thing is a massive problem, but when you're not honest with the public, they believe that everyone is. Then, see, the problem with being dishonest with the public like this is that when you are honest, they don't believe you. So you need to be more honest with them. Leave the lying to the Tories and Reform. They're good at it. They love it. But Labour need to be different. They need to say, look, we're going to be frank with you. This is the situation that we have inherited. They should have talked more. And I talked about this before. How many times have I said that they should have blamed Brexit on a lot of this? But they decided not to mention the B word until recently. But then it's too late at this stage. They should have been talking about Brexit before the general election. They should have been talking about Brexit after the general election and said, look, we have this disaster. We're going to have to increase taxes. That's the reality of the situation. Don't focus on the here and now. Say, look, we're going to have to do this now in order to fix the economy for the next election. That's what we need to. That should have been the focus of the Labour Party. Improve the situation for ordinary people and keep communicating that you are doing that. How many times have I said that they're making success when it comes, they're making progress, I should say, when it comes to the NHS waiting list. They're bringing it down. When was the last time you saw a press conference about the NHS waiting list? The Tories were having press conferences with the thing, stop the bolts. Remember that? The numbers would come down slightly and then they'd hold a press conference. Didn't do them any good because the issue that they were trying to sell, nobody wanted to buy. They went to reform instead. But for the NHS, there's a winning ticket for Labour. They could do a press conference, have a big number. I'm not a big fan of this sort of propaganda, but if I was advising them, I'd have a big number every day, put it up. This is the NHS waiting list. Look at it going down. Have it in big numbers, big red letters or numbers or whatever, and show it dropping all the time. Have a big graph every day. This is where the NHS waiting list is. Look at it going down. And if you keep reinforcing it, people will associate you with that success. But instead, they want to talk about smashing the gangs and stopping the boats on a policy that they can't win because Farage is in charge of that. That is Farage's territory. Brad, once again, thank you so much, Brad. The budget would have been more popular if former Prince Andrew delivered it and announced a weekly allowance for ex-offenders. I'm not sure how popular he is at the moment. It'd be nice to see how popular. Maybe he's actually more popular than Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. He's probably more popular than Rachel Reeves. Then maybe they need to bring on former Prince Andrew, because he's now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, isn't that his name? Andy. Maybe have him as a communications director or something like that. He's not doing much at the moment, and he'd be willing to work for Buttons, I imagine. Thanks so much, Brad. They're inept. At least they aren't evil, evil like the Tories, whatever the hell alignment deform are. Yes. Although when it came to the winter fuel allowance, when it came to the two-child benefit cap, they changed their tune, it seems, because polling and because, well, it's an issue being raised by other parties. So it's not, I hope that Rachel Reeves had a change of mind because she looked at it and said, hey, we can't support this policy because it's inhumane. I hope that's the case. I'm not completely convinced. There's a risk that it was more a political decision. But I think we are starting to see Labour move back to the left or move back to the centre, whichever way you want to present it. Dude, United's Federation of Planets flag in the background. That is super cool. Thank you so much for that. It's I didn't get it. It was one of the moderators who sent it. I'm not going to say their name, but they sent it to me. So yeah, I'm a huge, not a huge fan of Star Trek. I'm a big fan. I like The Next Generation is my favorite, and Q. Q is Max is Q. Thanks so much for that. No, I wish. Q is I think Q is the most interesting character in all of Star Trek. My favorite is of course Picard, but Q is probably the I don't know if I haven't watched much of the new stuff, but the old Q from The Next Generation, he was I think he's one of the most interesting characters in all TV series, and I particularly love the episode where he has his powers taken away from him and he has to live like a human, and one of the first things he does is he's like, I feel hungry, I feel this strange feeling in the center of my body. It's hunger. Okay, what do I do? Eat something. So he has like 12 chocolate ice creams or something like that. Great actor, yes. Anyway, guys, moving on. Actually, we're about halfway through the stream, so we'll just take a short comedy moment. So hope you enjoy this clip. And then we'll be back in a jiffy with more serious stuff. So here we go.
Hello, Zara. It's Jeremy here. Good to see you at the conference yesterday. Listen, I've got a quick question. I said it was good to see you at the conference yesterday. No, I'm not being sarcastic. It was good to see you at the... Why would I be sarcastic? It was good to see you at the... Listen, it was just a pleasantry. It was just a pleasantry to start the conversation. Listen, I've got a quick question. Yes, it was nice to see you. I'm being genuine about that. It was nice to see you. Jeez. Yes, that was a sigh, Zara. That was a sigh, because we can't get through one phone conversation these days without... I'm not saying it is all your fault. I'm just saying... No, I'm not pulling a face. No, I'm not pulling. You're not here. You don't know if I'm pulling a face or not. All right. So can I just ask the question that I wanted to ask? Is that possible? Right. I left a pen on the desk on the stage last night. I'm just wondering if anyone picked it up because it was quite an expensive pen, and I. No, I'm not accusing you of taking the pens. Oh my.
I can imagine that's exactly how the conversations go with your party. Anyway, moving on. The jury's out. The verdict on Lamy's justice reforms. So as we know, David Lammy has made some reforms to the justice system, and what it includes removing trial by jury in some cases. Now, not all cases, but in some cases. I'm actually against this because the motivation behind it is, well, there's a massive backlog and we need to reduce the backlog, which is understandable because some people have been waiting years and years for justice and they may have to wait years and years more. So the thinking behind this is if we remove the jury requirement, we're going to be able to speed up the process. And I think this is, I think Max is more Star Wars. Not more, it's equal, so somewhat equal. But it's about speeding up the process. But unfortunately, I think there's a risk here that some people may be denied justice because they don't have access to a jury trial. And it's not just about, aspects of the backlog are not just about the jury trials, it's also about investment. It's about staffing levels. Last year the junior barristers were going on strike because they didn't have enough, they weren't paid enough, and they didn't have the resources necessary to do their job. Now, the Tories at the time were just ignoring them and insulting them. But this is a real concern because you need a properly functional justice system. And you have the Tories who have underfunded the system over the last when they were in power for 14 years. And then they didn't provide sufficient funding to hire new people into it. And it's a very labor-intensive process. You need a lot of staff to process all these claims and these cases. You need to process these cases, and it's at breaking point. And then people are not. We saw last year with people being released from prison early because the prisons are full. So it's broken at every stage. The police don't have the resources when it comes to arresting people, so in many cases they're not arresting people. It's not worth their while because of the cost related to dealing with shoplifting. Then people are not going into they're not getting their day in court because the court is full. They don't have the resources. And then people are not going into prison because the prisons are full. So at every stage it's broken. And even after that, even when people come out of prison, there's no support for them. So what happens? In many cases, they reoffend, either because there isn't a support for them or because they want to get back into prison because there's nothing for them on the outside. So the whole system needs to be rebuilt, in a sense, because of what the Tories were doing for so long. Okay, I already covered that. So I think there's a real risk here of throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to removal of the jury trial. I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comment section in the chat. Wouldn't magistrates charge more? It's possible. It's possible that it'd be more expensive with just magistrates. But I don't think it's just about cost. I think it's also about manpower. Magic Roundabout characters were all on drugs. I didn't know about that. When I was a kid and I heard the song Puff the Magic Dragon, I actually thought it was about a dragon who blew smoke. I didn't know the full meaning behind it. I was a kid at the time. I didn't realize. I love Star Wars original, Star Trek, the Alien franchise, but mainly Doctor Who. Never got into Doctor Who. Not sure why. I lost any respect I had for Lammy. when he got close to JD Vance. Yeah, I really don't like this thing of, well, we need to kiss Donald Trump's ring, or his big orange behind. But he will treat us with nothing but contempt. But on this side of the pond, we have to genuflect to Donald Trump. I never understood this thing. A Warhammer 40k fan. My friend, he was a big fan, or he is a big fan, I think, of Warhammer. Warhammer or no, I think it was Warhammer, the original one, the fantasy one, not the medieval, the old one, the medieval one. Dougal was on drugs, and I'm not sure about Florence. Probably. So, did Keir Starmer lie about stuff? Well, let's jump into this.
Nice to see you. How are you? How are you?
The Prime Minister trying to get back on the front foot on a visit to a London nursery.
Andy, how old are you now?
3.
3. And have you been...
I'm 3.5.
3.5. That matters. That matters a lot.
Acknowledging that details matter as he tries to see off a row over whether the Chancellor misled voters about the public finances and defend Labour's second big tax raising budget.
I'm proud we're lifting over 500,000 children out of poverty. And that is the story of the budget. There were necessary choices.
But this government facing criticism over its approach amid accusations the Chancellor misled voters. We found out from the Office of Budget Responsibility that the Chancellor, with your backing, misled the public on November the 4th when she warned about a black hole in the public finances without telling us the second bit, that higher than expected tax receipts meant the economy was in a much healthier position than the Chancellor publicly suggested.
Okay, so this is the problem here. It was not in a much healthier position, but it was in a healthier position. So the Chancellor left out information. So is that lying? It's like, is it a lie if you don't tell the whole truth? If you tell part of it, but you leave out a very important part, is that lying? So that comes down to your interpretation of lying. I think it was dishonest. I think it was dishonest behavior. Lie by omission, exactly. I think what it does is it erodes trust in politics, and this is what the Labour Party were supposed to be doing, is rebuilding trust in politics. They said, we're going to come in, we're going to be serious, we're going to be the adults in the room. You're no longer going to have to deal with the Tories, who are in absolute shambles, who are lying constantly to you. We're actually going to be different. And are they different? Are they turning over a new leaf? Are they separating themselves from the Tories? Well, this sort of thing doesn't help. So I'll leave it up to you guys whether the Chancellor was lying. I think whatever she had done undermined trust with the public, whether it was lying or not. Trust has been undermined, and that's not what you need going forward, because people's trust in politics is already at rock bottom. And there's an opportunity for you to improve it. Once again, you have a massive majority, and the next election is years away. So it was not necessary to engage in this sort of semantic approach to, well, is the situation really bad, or is it terrible? Or because once again, they wanted to sell the idea that, well, it's bad, but not terrible. It's 3.5 Ronkins. It's not, it's not completely a disaster, but it's not great either. Because if they had sold it as an absolute disaster, then the response from the media and the politicians in opposition would say, well, you have been in charge for a year. Like, why haven't you improved the situation? But then they couldn't say that everything is rosy, because then they would say, well, it's not that good, and we have to increase taxes. So how would you justify increasing taxes if everything is fantastic? But this is down to decisions made by the government. It's not because of what the OBR were doing. The OBR didn't put any obligations on the government. It was the government themselves that put themselves into this fix. And what we saw the last few days when it was an attempt to blame the OBR, and I think that's not very honest either, because the OBR, whether you like it or not, is there to provide a forecast, to say this is what we predict is going to happen. And the government is supposed to use that as a tool. But to blame the OBR because the situation ended up like this, once again, it's not honest. Is it going to cost them votes? No, I don't think so. Is it going to result in them losing the election? No, I don't think so. People are going to move on from this very quickly. And we've seen it before. I keep saying this, a week is a long time in politics. A month is an infinity. And, by the time the local elections come around, people will not be talking about the budget. People will not be talking about their taxes as a result of the budget. They'll be talking about something else. They'll be probably talking about the cost of living crisis. And that's what the government's focus should be on. Caroline, thank you so much. That super dad is a wonderful kitty there. Thank you. Is it a kitty or a dog? I think it's a dog, actually. I need to go to Specsavers, like what's his name? Dominic Cummins. Anyway, moving on. Unfortunately, I have to cover this story because it's about immigration. So, well, let's have a listen.
David, this one caught my eye this morning, the Daily Express as well. Britain's asylum capital. 1 in 3 children there don't speak English as a first language.
Yes, there's 28.8% of the population of students in Glasgow schools don't speak English as their first language. Now you might say
almost 30%.
Yeah,
don't speak English
as their first language. So it's not that they don't speak English, it's that they don't speak English as their first language. Now, we know that a lot of people came from Ukraine, since the invasion of Ukraine. We know a lot of people were invited to come from Hong Kong. We know a lot of people are coming from all over the world. But you notice here that they're very careful to say they speak Scottish, Max. They're not serious. No, they're not. But what they're trying to do is sell, once again, GB News and Reform TV, or as I like to call them, Reform TV, are constantly pushing this, there are all these people who don't speak English, but they had to be careful not to say they don't speak English. They don't speak English as their first language. But Britain used to be an empire. So as a lot of people are coming from the colonies, people who are, they were colonized at one stage and they decided, well, let's move back. Let's move to Britain where there are opportunities. They speak English, but it's not their first language. There are opportunities. Like, you have to think about it from another point of view. If people are coming, it means that there are opportunities available. If people are not coming, then there are probably no opportunities. It's like Reform want to run the country down so bad. The Tories want to make the situation so terrible, the economy so bad, that it discourages people from coming. But that's not something you should be selling. You should be selling the idea that, look at all these people coming here because there are opportunities here. We're attracting people. But they don't see it like that.
It's a lot. Wow. It's a hell of a lot.
I don't see that so much as an indictment on them. It's a worry for teachers. How do teachers cope with that? What sort of teacher have you to get?
I don't know what part of the world you are in, guys, but I've noticed a lot of students who have English as their second or third language actually speak it better than. Let me rephrase that. So I live in Italy, and a lot of Italians, their English is worse than, for example, people who come from outside Italy, like people from Albania or Romania or other Eastern European countries. Their family have moved here, and they generally have a better command of English than the Italians do. Italians are not very famous for their level of English. But Eastern Europeans generally have a really high level of English. But that's not their first language. It's their second language. So if you have somebody who has 2 languages, who's able to speak 2 languages, it's easier for them to learn a third language or a fourth language because their mind is already is trained in a sense to learn another language. That's a positive thing. Wouldn't you want people like that in your society? People who can speak a number of languages. But for GB News, it's a terrible thing. It's oh my goodness, people are able to speak 2 languages.
And teach those children.
Yeah, and the other thing, the knock-on effect from that, Eamon, is that the other students who can speak English are being held back because teachers are putting a lot of effort into teaching those who can't speak English.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a symptom of an immigration.
Okay, but those students are generally taught during the summertime. So their English, if their English is poor, they spend more time studying English to get up to a level where they're able to use it to a better standard. But they have to do a lot of the study during the summertime. So when the native population are out having a good time, a lot of these students, if they've come in from abroad, are studying during the summer period to improve their English so that they're ready for the new school year.
System that is just way too overrun. It is clear when you've got nearly a third of students in school in Glasgow not having English as their first language.
But how is it overrun? Like, we haven't heard from the teachers saying, actually, we can't teach anyone because there are too many foreigners. What we're hearing is, political commentators say, well, the schools must be overrun with all these people who speak English as a second language. You haven't actually looked at the quality of their English as a second language. You're just basing this on what? On feelings. Once again, you're not actually, GB News and the media are not interviewing people who actually know what they're talking about. They're just interviewing people who are extremely confident in what they're talking about. Glasgow Gal, thank you so much for that super chat. Probably the Barnes in Glasgow speak Scots, yes. Barnes, for people who don't know, is children in Scots Gaelic. But in Wales, a significant number of the population speak Welsh as the first language and English as the second language. So would they be regarded as foreigners as well? Well, for example, Jacob Rees-Mogg considers people who don't speak English as their first language as foreigners, because he was describing how, I think it was an MP who was speaking Welsh in the House of Commons. He chastised them for not speaking English, I think it was, when he was the leader of the House. Although for him it's okay to speak Latin, which is an actual dead language. It's not even an alive one. It's an actual dead language. But so you're able to speak Latin in the House of Commons, which is not a live language. Nobody speaks it fluent. Nobody speaks it as their first language today. We're not talking about priests or whatever. We're talking about people speaking it as their first language. But for Jacob Rees-Mogg, Welsh or Irish or Scots Gaelic is actually a foreign language. But then for him, Scotland and Wales are counties, English counties. Oh my goodness. Anyway, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, but there are two more stories here. One is about Jacob Rees-Mogg. I was on Jacob Rees-Mogg. Nigel Farage. Is Nigel Farage a racist, or was he just one when he was at school?
I get your opinion on another story which we're covering today, and that is Lord Hermer. Of course, this is Keir Starmer's Attorney General, has waded into the debate around Nigel Farage, alleged comments he made 50 years ago. Lord Hermer is demanding that Nigel Farage apologises. This hasn't even been proven to have happened. If there was any proof of it, presumably we'd have seen it by now. Why is the Attorney General, Sir Keir Starmer's man, getting involved? Does this, to you, feel like a politically motivated attack?
Well,
there's a statute of limitations on being a racist. When there's a threshold, so you can be a racist for up to 35 years, and then you no longer become, you can no longer be referred to as a racist because the time limit has run out. You've reached the time limit. It's over. So it's like, it was 50 years ago, okay? Nigel Farage may have made comments, but there were 50. See, my problem with Nigel Farage is not that he made the comments 50 years ago. It's what does he think today? And he was interviewed about this, and he tried to dismiss it as, well, I was 13 at the time, and I didn't, and if I said something that was offensive to people, I didn't mean it. But he didn't apologize. Like, he didn't say, no, I didn't say anything. He said, I didn't intend to offend anyone. There's a big difference between I didn't say X and I said X, but my intention was not to offend with X. Now, if he had come out and said, look, I said some stupid things when I was a child, I'm very sorry about that. That does not represent me today. That would be a different situation. Everyone, when they were young, did stupid things, myself included. But at least, we hope that people today have learned from those experiences. They've learned, to improve themselves, to grow as adults. And normally one way of doing that would be to say, look, I'm sorry about what I said in the past. I was stupid. It was the wrong thing. I was going along with the crowd, or I was trying to act cool or something like that. It was disgraceful behavior. I want to apologize to the people involved. That would actually show adult behavior. That would show that you have reformed yourself. But Nigel Farage did not do that. He said, I never intended to cause offense by saying X. Not that he didn't say X. So once again, it's completely different.
I never condone any comments which were anti-Semitic, whether they were made today or 50 years ago. But Lord Hermer is the one that should be apologising for the things that he's done over the course of his life. Look at the clients that he's taken on: Shamima Begum, Jerry Adams.
Okay. So the Attorney General... So let's stop talking about Nigel Farage saying racist things in the past, and let's instead talk about somebody who did their job. So he should apologize for doing his job. His job is to represent his client. Everyone is supposed to be given access to representation under the law. But according to Robert Jenrick, some people should receive representation and other people should not. Because that's what he's suggesting here. He's suggesting that Jerry Adams or the other people that he mentioned did not deserve representation under the law. So how are they supposed to represent themselves? Or how are they supposed to be represented? To represent themselves, even though they don't have a legal background, even though they don't have the skills? Is this what Robert Jenrick wants when he wants to get rid of the European Convention on Human Rights, that individuals would not be provided with a lawyer, that they'll have to defend themselves in court? I couldn't defend myself in court. I would fall apart because I don't have the ability to do so. I don't have the skill set. That's why we have lawyers. We have people who are experts trained to represent their clients. Robert Jenrick seems to want to get rid of that because he's criticizing the current Attorney General for doing their job of... You don't have to agree with Jerry Adams or the other individual. You can have nothing but contempt for those individuals. You can believe them to be the worst people on the planet. But under a civilized system, within a civilized society, we generally allow people to have some sort of expert represent them legally. But I keep saying Rupert Lowe. Robert Jenrick seems to be against that. Glasgow Gal, thanks so much once again for that super chat. The GB News journalists should learn another language. I don't think they care about other languages.
9/11 and 7/7 terrorists. He always seems to be on the side of people who hate our country.
He's on the side of people who hate our country. This guy hates Britain. He doesn't want to see it improved. He wants to take people's rights away. He hates British people. I'm going to say that. And if Robert Jenrick wants to sue me, he can. I'm saying that he hates British people because he wants to take their rights away. He wants to take the protections for their freedom of expression, freedom to congregate, freedom to form a union. He wants to take all those rights away, the protections for those rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. He doesn't care about immigrants. It's just a tool. I want an apology from Fred West's lawyer. God, he's a prick. He is. And he thinks this is going to win him support. He's in the wrong party. He should be in Reform. And I'm not going to bet on it, but it's getting closer and closer to the time when he actually will join Reform UK.
And maybe he's siding with other members of the government to attack those on the right and try and shut down people who want to oppose the Labour government right now.
But it's not about, how is it attacking the right by suggesting that Nigel Farage should apologise if he made racist statements? Shouldn't anyone who made racist statements in the past apologise? Or anti-Semitic statements? Robert Jenrick seems to be okay with Nigel Farage's alleged anti-Semitism. It wasn't this the guy who said that we should put up a flag of The Star of David, put on the Star of David, the Israeli flag above the port of entry, in solidarity with the Israelis. So you would imagine somebody who wants to show solidarity with the Israelis would be against anti-Semitism, who'd be foaming at the mouth if he ever got the idea that somebody could be anti-Semitic. But when it comes to Nigel Farage, well, there are more important things to talk about. Okay, and there's a statute of limitations on Nigel Farage's alleged anti-Semitism. It wears out after a number of years. My goodness. Vote reform, get the Tories. Yes. Or it's almost vote the Tories, get reform at this stage. The Tories should apologise for the way the country is now, and while they're at it, pay a dump of money to fix it. I've said before what they should have been forced. Here's a bit of a joke. Of course, it's not going to happen, but maybe Keir Starmer should leave the European Convention on Human Rights and throw Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick in jail. You say, well, would that be a breach of their human rights? Yes, it would. Throw them in jail. Ban Reform UK. They keep saying that Keir Starmer is some sort of dictator. They keep asking for the UK to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, then maybe Keir Starmer should leave the European Convention on Human Rights just for one day and use that day to ban Reform UK as a political party, to put Nigel Farage in jail. And you say, what would he be in jail for? Like, what crime did he commit? It doesn't matter. He'd be thrown in jail. But he'd need due process. But there's no European Convention on Human Rights anymore. There's no one there to protect. Well, you could take it up with the Supreme Court. Well, Keir Starmer could ban the Supreme Court. Get rid of it. Put in Supreme Court justices that he decided. He could make David Lammy a Supreme Court justice. There you have it. Reform UK banned. They could round up all the Reform UK party members, throw them in jail. Problem solved. That's what they want. They're calling for the UK to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. So they'd like Keir Starmer to have these powers. Not sure if if he started doing that, they'd be, hey, wait a minute, what about my human rights? What human rights? You wanted to leave the European Convention. Robert Jenrick could be thrown in jail. Robert Jenrick should be thrown in jail if the UK leaves the European Convention on Human Rights. And he can complain about it in his cell, sitting next to Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson. If I could ever interview the frigging guy, I would say that to his face. Jenrick joining Deform would be akin to pissing on a turd. Neither substance adds anything useful to the other, but the stench gets worse. Thanks so much, Freckled Bunny. I love that image there. It's wonderful. But it's poetic and it's right on the money there. Yes. Just gets worse. The smell just gets worse. There's no advantage whatsoever. So going from one turd to another, I wanted to cover this story here. So it seems that we're going back to 2003 again. Do you remember 2003 when George W. Bush and the Coalition of the Willing, was the Coalition of the Willing at the time, I don't remember the name, the UK, the US and a few other countries, said, let's go to war with Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction.
To Venezuela now, where President Nicolas Maduro has addressed a pro-government march in the capital, Caracas. Amid rising tensions with the United States, Maduro told the crowd that he wanted peace and swore loyalty to Venezuela. Thousands of people marched in protest against mounting threats from the US, which has included a major buildup of warships in the Caribbean. In recent weeks...
Okay, let me be very clear. I'm no fan of Maduro. I don't think he's an honest person. I think he has engaged in crackdowns on opposition members. He's acting like a dictator. There haven't been transparent elections for him, and there isn't. And there are human rights abuses taking place in Venezuela. But does that mean that they should have a regime change? Does that mean that what Donald Trump is doing is correct? Of course not. It's exactly like, who's a fan of Maduro? Nobody is here. But that's not a justification to remove him by force. And this is what the Trump administration is trying to do. Like Saddam Hussein in 2003. Trumped up charges And once again, they're using the excuse of drugs coming into the United States as a catalyst to remove it. I don't know if they're actually going to go through with this, but the tension is rising all the time, and it's looking more and more likely that there will be some attempt at a regime change. And of course, Trump wants somebody in there who will be friendly to him. And I think we're starting to see a new era when it comes to diplomacy. The old order is gone. Of course, the United States has a long history of getting involved in Central and South America, but Central America in particular. But the gloves are off now. The rule book has been thrown out the window. There's no attempt to present this as something legal or something above board. I think the rhetoric is going to get worse and worse as we go forward, unfortunately. What's with these dictator types in red hats? I don't know exactly. Well said, Kirsty. Yes. When is the one in the White House going to be removed?
The U.S. has carried out strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats from Venezuela. Maduro accuses the U.S. of trying to overthrow him.
So once again, if these boats are carrying drugs, you're supposed to impound them, stop them, impound them, and arrest the individuals involved, and allow them to have their day in court where they can defend themselves. Because we don't know if these boats are carrying drugs or not. You just see a boat with some people on it, and it's and then an explosion. Brad, once again, thank you so much, Brad. Family Guy Peter Griffin. Anyone who doesn't want war is gay. Congress. I want to go to war. Cheney. I was the first one who wanted to go to war. What's that? Oh my goodness. Oh, Cheney. I wonder how he's dealing. How is he getting on down in hell at the moment?
Let's bring in Renata Segura. She's Program Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at International Crisis Group. Good to have you with us, Renata. Now, Donald Trump has been meeting his national security officials on this issue. How do you think the U.S. pressure is playing out in Venezuela?
Well, the pressure is not doing the two things that the U.S. is hoping that it does. One, convince Maduro to voluntarily leave power, or perhaps convince the military in Venezuela to do a coup against him. So that is definitely not working. And as your report just said, Maduro is preparing for any eventual attack in the ground. I think most Venezuelans continue with their daily life, which is by no means easy. Venezuela is facing one of the most serious humanitarian crises in the continent. But what we're seeing is an extreme polarization. Recent polls show that the majority of Venezuelans are opposed to a military intervention. But as we know, a lot of the main opposition figures are actually supportive of the U.S. coming into Venezuela. So there's a lot of tension.
So there's a risk here that you could see civil war because the opposition want to see the Americans come in, and the opposition may receive support from the United States. And then, of course, this would create a massive backlash from the government in Venezuela. And, of course, if they feel threatened, they will respond by rounding up people who disagree with Maduro and throw them in jail. And this will just exacerbate the situation. The United States, of course, what do they want? It seems they want the oil. It's as simple as that. There are massive oil reserves there, and either they want to own that oil or they want to put someone in place who's going to facilitate the United States or to be friendly to the United States, which, of course, we've seen before during the 1980s in particular. Hetzef ordered a double tap. He's in big trouble. And of course, blaming other people. You have this drunken guy in charge of the Department of War. No longer the Department of Defense, the Department of War. It's insane. And, the Republicans are in trouble at the moment. And the only positive that can come out of all of this, is that maybe this will start to eat away at their majorities. Donald Trump is talking about war and talking about, Putin and stuff like that, when ordinary Americans are struggling and they're saying, hey, what about the cost of living crisis or the affordability crisis? And Trump is ignoring that, or he's trying to suggest that it's a democratic scam. It's like the affordability. People can't afford to buy stuff. That's not real. That's just the Democrats trying to convince people that they can't buy stuff. Yes, but I was in the supermarket yesterday. I was in the store, and look at the price of stuff. Everything has gone up. That's not real. That's fake news. Yeah, you can try and sell that to people who are poor, but when they see the prices going up, they see that their wages are not increasing in line with the price of stuff, then they're going to go, it's very difficult. It's one thing to convince people that immigrants are coming to steal your car or eat your cat or dog, but it's another thing to try and convince people that prices are not actually going up when they can see it themselves. It takes a lot of brainwashing from the likes of, Fox News or Newsmax or Donald Trump's online platform. It takes a lot of brainwashing to convince people that prices are not going up, or if they are, it's nothing to do with Donald Trump. He's been in power for almost a year now. He can't keep blaming it on Joe Biden. And as we get closer to the midterms, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Republicans. And maybe this is where Donald Trump's weak spot, is that if he loses his grip on the Republicans, they will turn on him. They're afraid to turn on him at the moment because in some cases they need him, but others are probably realizing that they don't have a hope next year. And if that's the case, then I think they're going to turn Donald Trump into a lame duck, and then his support base will completely collapse. And hopefully he'll be removed from power, but he doesn't want to go, obviously. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much to everyone around the world who's on the stream, be it in the morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. They, the Trumpists, want the oil, Max. You are a cynic. Trumpski. Trumpski. Anyway, guys, before we go, I hope you enjoyed this clip. And then I will see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. I'll be on the post-stream chat for a little bit after the show tonight. Do jump on Discord if you are, if you're on Discord. And I hope you enjoyed this clip, and I'll bid you good night.
A Reform politician got into hot water this week by saying something racist. I'm now joined by another white man to discuss whether or not it was racist. So, was that racist thing that she said racist? Look, she's apologised, and I think we can all agree that what she said was offensive. But was it racist? It was crass and offensive. That's not really answering my question. What she said sounded bad, but in the party we've discussed it and decided that she didn't actually mean it like that. Sorry? She sounded like she was being racist, but she actually meant something else. So what did she mean? She meant that she was being driven mad by seeing so many black and brown people in adverts. That's literally what she said. But God, you've got me doing it now. Look, what I just said is not what I meant to say that she actually meant to say. What? Because after all, what is racism? You seem like the perfect person to ask. Racism is an attitude, it's a vibe, it's a feeling. It's about what you think. If you say something that sounds racist, but you don't think you're being racist, then you're not. So how can you tell what someone thinks? By what they say. But if what they say is what they actually think. But she said seeing black people drove her mad. People don't just say things they don't mean. Oh, my sweet summer child. So you're saying that she was lying, that she isn't driven mad by seeing black and brown people in adverts? No, I'm saying that she didn't mean what she said when she said that. But how do you know? Because she said so. But how do you know that she meant what she said when she said that? Because she'd have to be mad to say something actually racist out loud on TV, wouldn't she? Even these days? Fair point. But look, if she'd wanted to say something racist, she'd have said something actually racist. But this wasn't that. She was simply trying to make a point. What point? Well, people have legitimate concerns about mass migration and also about overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in advertising. Why have you put those two things together? Does that not suggest that you think that all ethnic minorities are migrants? And does that not make you sound a bit, well, racist? But the important thing is that when I said the racist thing, I didn't think I was being racist, or at least you can't prove that I did, which is basically the same. Thank you. Not racist. Next up, as Donald Trump says that he'd love to run for a third term, despite that being unconstitutional, we ask, at this point, would it simply be easier for us to report only the things that he says and does that aren't illegal? Or would that make the news too short?
Yes, it would, unfortunately. So, guys, I will see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and have a wonderful week.